Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders and the path they took to create change. Past guests include Roland Frazier, Ryan Dice, and Joe Polish. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you to protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 27 years. So if you're a company that has software, a product, or a design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. And you could email my team at welcome@goldsteinpc.com to explore if it's a match to work together. You can also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called The ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have with me here today Caulen Foster. Caulen is deeply involved in the e-commerce field. He's the founder of Almond Pro Foods, which essentially invented the almond protein industry in 2016. Notice that I pronounced almond in two different ways there in one sentence.
I noticed that.
He's also the vice president of D&V Pro Cleaning Services that provide cleaning, exhaust cleaning, and fire protection in 7 states. He's also president and co-founder of Brain Power, which helps brand owners to expand from Amazon into Shopify. It's my pleasure to welcome here today Caulen Foster. Welcome, Caulen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I heard your intro and I'm like, man, I got big shoes to fill here.
Well, your own, right? Your own are the big shoes to fill.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, let's talk about how you got started. Like, what was your first experience with entrepreneurship, of being in business?
Well, it was, so my first, ironically enough, my first venture into entrepreneurship was when I was in law school. And I was about a year and a half in. And it was right before spring break of law school. And I had just kind of gotten this, I don't know where it came from. I was looking for an apartment, long story short, I was looking for an apartment at the time, and I couldn't find anything. And I wanted to find an apartment with move-in specials, and I couldn't find anything. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a website that specializes in move-in specials. And there was tons of search volume for it. I did what little I knew to find, where traffic was going for it. And long story short, I did some research and I said, hey, I'm going to start a business. It was called myfirstmonthfree.com. And it failed absolutely terribly. I mean, it was really, really bad. But it was my first venture into understanding traffic, e-commerce, how people mobilize, through the internet. And it really kind of groomed me for what I would later do in the future. As I kind of started to get more comfortable with building sites, kind of building things from the ground up digitally. This is 2010, 2011. Things were a lot different back then, right? There wasn't these page builders and things you could scale up real quickly. You had to build things from scratch. So I ended up starting Almond Pro. That's a whole nother story about how it got started. But I built it from scratch, sourced everything, got everything started. And then approximately 2 years in, I'd gotten some really great traction when we started the site. We started the website. Started growing pretty quickly because we got a lot of organic traffic. We invented the almond protein space. It didn't exist before us. So I got a lot of really good press from PETA and, some other organic sources, and it just kept feeding us. And then eventually that just kind of, just like when you don't have any way to capture and monetize your data on a consistent basis, or your customers on a consistent basis, started to dip. Long story short, I kind of got into this rut where we weren't growing. We weren't seeing a lot of growth whatsoever. And I ended up meeting one of my good friends, him, Mike Sierra, who ended up becoming my consultant. He said, hey, listen, I've built a couple 7-figure businesses. I think I can help you. We got connected through a mutual friend. And I kid you not, it was probably maybe 15 minutes into our conversation when he started breaking things down to me and showing me what he does and how things work. I was like, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. Like, there's no question that I'm gonna go heavy into digital marketing for the rest of my life. And the proposition that he gave me was, I have an agency, and you can either pay my agency to do the work for you, or I can do consulting for you, whichever one you want. And I'll do the first session for you. I'm gonna do it for free. I'm not gonna charge you anything, just to see which one you want to go, which direction you want to go. And 15 minutes in, he had me hooked. I mean, we were consulting. I was doing consulting with him 5 days a week. I mean, I was spending a lot of money doing it, but the knowledge I gained has propelled me to where I'm at today. And I've worked very closely with him since. And, I've just been super involved with e-commerce. I've done a lot of performance-based stuff. And then eventually I ended up getting into the agency space with Brainpower. So that's the very abridged version of everything. I could go on for an hour on all the roads that led there, but that's the kind of the base.
So that's so interesting because it seems like what you did is like, rather than opt for done for you, which a lot of people do, it's like, hey, just get this done for me. You opted to do the consulting, which basically you were able to learn, like you did the work, but you were able to kind of get the higher level guidance and like essentially use it as a learning process yourself. Yeah,
100%. That was literally what took, because it was one of those pivots in life, honestly, that I didn't know it was going to be a life-changing decision when I made it. And that's why I'm very careful these days about like the opportunities I take, because that opportunity literally changed the course of my life. Like it really did. Like Mike is still one of my best friends. I love him dearly because he literally changed the direction. I don't know what I would be doing had I never made that decision to learn it, as opposed to just here's some money, we have some capital, do it for me,
Yeah. So see, that's why you're careful with opportunities, because it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for. Like you might just find yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's more like you never know which decision you're going to make is going to bring you down a path that you never even imagined you would be on. I never would have known, my whole life, everybody told me I should be an attorney, like from the time I was in 5th grade, everybody's like, Caulen needs to be an attorney. And, I just, that one decision, of just not opting in to pay for the services, just doing it myself, I would have never seen what I saw in those 15 minutes. I mean, it just clicked. I was like, this makes sense. This is what I want to do. And I know this is where the market's going.
That's amazing. So what did become of that attorney career?
Not much, but a little bit of debt, a little bit of debt.
Yeah.
I left. Like I said, I left from one week to the next, man. I had no intentions of quitting law school the week before. I was already I was already halfway into 2L, or L2, whatever it's called. I don't even remember anymore. But my second year. But I was already there. I was already doing it. You were
looking for housing, and then you decided to create a website, and then that sent you down the whole path. If you didn't need housing, if like someone had said like, hey, dude, you could just come stay with me. I've got this great place with an extra bedroom.
So true.
You might have never ended up where you did.
I never thought of it like that, actually. You're the first person that's put it in perspective like that, but that's true. That's yet another pivot. That's so very true.
Yeah.
Because I had no money. I had nothing at that time. We had sleeping, like parents' house at the time.
Yeah. That's incredible. But yeah, so then that kind of brought you into the space of working with clients, essentially, because you were working with an agency, essentially. Yep. And you were the client, but he was kind of training you how to work with clients by consulting with you like that.
Yeah. And the thing is, on top of that, once him and I mean, it gets really deep, with how our relationship developed, but we ended up getting involved in business ventures together and stuff. We got really close because, I absorbed it so quick. For the amount of time that I was involved in it, I don't like to say like I was significantly faster than the average person, but like the flow of traffic, maybe because I had been involved in it for a couple of years or something like that. I don't know what it was, but just understanding how it mobilized, monetized, how the infrastructure was built, it just made a lot of sense. So I took to it very quick. And just the writing, I was always a very strong writer. So, the whole part of the digital and the e-commerce stuff works. So I would end up actually doing work for Mike for his agency. So I started doing like intern work. Like I would build out emails. I would do work for them essentially almost for free at some points because I just wanted to get involved in the space. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So whatever I could do to nurture that craft, I would do it. And then I got involved on consulting. And then like I started teaching people what I had learned, and it just like kind of snowballed,
Yeah, absolutely. And like, how did you get involved in the whole Amazon to Shopify journey? So did you have your own Amazon to Shopify journey?
No. So it's kind of funny because I've kind of opted out of going too heavy on Amazon. Like we sell my CPG brands on Amazon, but I don't particularly take I don't want to say I don't take a lot of interest in it, but it's not, I'm significantly more invested time and money wise into our internal infrastructure, right? Because I like that control of, having my customer access to my customers, a lot of the good stuff that comes with, having your own external traffic outside of Amazon. But so it's kind of an interesting story. It gets really in depth, but I ended up partnering up with a good friend of mine, and we were talking, and he had been involved in an agency, and we were talking about kind of what we wanted to start, because I had a client that needed some work. He was on Amazon. He actually owns one of the largest organic supplement companies on Amazon. And he had been working with somebody on Upwork for a while, and he just got creamed. They took him for a bunch of money, and the work was terrible. And he had been asking me for a while, hey, why don't you take this on as a project? I'm like, oh, man, I really don't want to do it. I really don't want to, I'm doing my own thing right now. I'm doing performance projects. I don't know if I really want to do an agency. And I'm very particular about the people I work with. And then finally, he asked me for like a favor. He's like, dude, could you just please do this for me? Like, I really need this favor. I've gotten taken by this guy. I got another agency that's trying to sell me for this. Just do it. And I said, all right. I said, if one person comes with me to help me out. So I called my buddy and I said, hey, he had just exited his agency. I said, hey, do you want to take on this project with me? You want to help me out? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. I like the project. I like the proposition behind it. As we realized how good we were working together, right? And we're like, man, we're doing a really great job on this. We built some really amazing infrastructure very quickly. We had a time crunch and we executed very well. And he's like, we should do an agency together. And I was like, yeah, we should. He's like, but I don't want to just sell anything. I don't want to just sell. When I was working at my last place, I was selling this one day and I was selling something else another day. I had no niche. We didn't have a very specified space that we would be working in. So let's figure that out. And I said, well, why don't we just sell everything on Shopify? He's like, nah, it's not going to work. We need to focus on something. And then one day he says to me, hey, why don't we look at who we're working with now? And then he proposed it. He says, why don't we specialize in working with people who are on Amazon and looking to expand to Shopify? And I happen to have my friend, he owns a pretty sizable Amazon agency. And he was the one who gave me the Amazon contact that I had. So I called him and I said, hey, what do you think about this? This is what we're going to do. And he said, I love it. He's like, I got a client for you tomorrow. Close the next client the next day. And before you knew, we're getting people that are like kind of coming on board, and that's how we fell into it. And we was really just looking at where the market is going, right? People tend to I always say people tend to diverge Amazon and Shopify. Like they're two separate, they are. From an infrastructure standpoint, they're two entirely different entities. But in reality, after where e-commerce is going, post-COVID, huge surge in e-commerce demand, especially on Amazon. Amazon's stock price quadrupled over the matter of 16 months. And I know that's shareholder driven, but you know what I mean? Like it's indicative of a very strong market. That business is not going anywhere. And even though they have their quirks, there are sellers that don't like a lot of things about Amazon. The traffic exists. They have the number one drug in the world, which is traffic, right? And they have loads of it. And if you look at where the natural flow of traffic is going, there's no reason to separate the two. We should be bringing them together for multi-channel domination is what we would call it, right? You want to be on every facet. Look at an iPad. An iPad doesn't only sell in an Apple store. It sells at T-Mobile. You can buy them at Walmart. You can buy them at anywhere, but people still go to the Apple store. If you walk by an Apple store, it's jam-packed, So our goal is really to bring people kind of together with all the platforms as opposed to taking one from the other.
Got it. Well, you're looking to help them expand their reach too.
Right. Multi-channel, omnichannel,
multi-channel. And so essentially kind of what worked though is you rolling it back a bit. So you and your partner looked at what is a good niche for your right. agency. And then you essentially came up with this idea, Amazon to Shopify. You had a contact, you closed a new client. And so then you by closing that client, you saw that it works. This is something that we can do. This is a value proposition that people want.
Yes.
And then you were able to duplicate it on and on from there, because essentially you had found a client, right, that wanted something. And then now you're able to duplicate it to people just like that over and over and over again.
100%. And then we built the processes around it. We're still building them, but yeah, that's essentially what we did. And then, we just developed kind of all the infrastructure. We would understand that we knew he wasn't the only person that needed this infrastructure, because Shopify, people who are only on Shopify need this infrastructure, let alone people who are also on Amazon selling. And they're two separate languages. I've never personally met somebody who's an expert on Amazon, like a high level expert, who's also a really high level expert on Shopify. It's not common. I wouldn't say they don't exist, but they're very few and far in between.
Yep.
You don't see
I could think of Amazon experts on this hand. I could think of Shopify experts on this one, but I can't think of anyone in particular that's both.
Yeah, it's just not. They're both, Amazon has its own internal infrastructure. It has its own language, literally they have their own advertising language, their own metrics. When you're on, more external e-commerce, right? Shopify, WooCommerce, you're dealing with external traffic sources. You're dealing with external metrics across various traffic sources, media channels. You don't really have all that so much with Amazon. You've got their internal media channel where they broker 57% of all the traffic, all the search queries that are coming into, product searches.
Yeah, no, like there's a lot of jargon, a lot of terminology. Even like if you're not in the Amazon space and some said FBA is like,
yeah,
you have no idea. I mean, like FBA is like, oh, that's like saying like, you mentioned law school, like, oh, I'm a 2L.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you have no idea what a 2L is, right?
100%. Yeah, I would never know that a contract is spelled with a K in law school. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would never have known that.
The contract is a K, exactly.
A K. I would have never known that. So yeah, that's a great point. Yeah,
right.
100%.
So, I know there's a lot to the journey of taking an Amazon seller and bringing them into Shopify. But if you had a nutshell, what does that journey look like, or where does it start?
Great question. So the number one thing that I would say is the right product. That is probably without a question the number one thing, because so we actually invented something called the toothbrush test. And it basically applies to the nature of the products that we sell, right? If you have a regular toothbrush, right, and that toothbrush is just a generic item, that would probably be something that somebody wholesales on Amazon. It doesn't improve or replace the way a problem is solved, right? Like it's just the generic toothbrush. That is not a direct response, kind of unique and intriguing product to sell on Shopify. Those are typically the products that work on Shopify. So let's say as opposed to just like a plain toothbrush, you have an electric toothbrush with a water pick and a stand. That's something that would be on both platforms, right?
Right.
But now there's a third aspect of that. So you've got the first one, which is a generic toothbrush, probably not going to sell on Shopify. That's an Amazon product. You've got a improvement offer or an improvement to the problem, which is electric with a water pick. And then you've got a third one, which would be like a hands-free toothbrush, which they do exist. I didn't know this until we created this test. But there's like a hands-free toothbrush that you put in your mouth and it bubbles and it cleans your mouth. And that's a replacement to how a problem is solved, right? And that product right there is actually probably too innovative for Amazon. It should be on Shopify more than likely first, because people aren't going to search for hands-free toothbrush, right? So the number one thing is the product. We're very selective about the products we take. They have to have a very strong, unique selling proposition in order for us to even entertain the idea. And that test, by the way, funny story, came from somebody who came to us with a toothbrush. The guy was doing like $200K a month on toothbrushes. He came from my friend's agency, and we tried to explain this to him, and he just couldn't grasp it. He couldn't grasp why we wouldn't sell his project or his product for, on his project. And that's where we my business partner and I, we said, hey, we're going to create something called the toothbrush, because we lined it up just like I said, listen, this is what you have. This is what we would need, right? We would need like an electric toothbrush, or here's a hands-free toothbrush. And he just couldn't process it. And then we said, we're going to use this thing called the toothbrush test from now on.
Oh, that's cool. So, I guess basically as I see it, it's like if a product is unique, then it's not really good for Amazon because people aren't searching for it. Right. But what's that?
Too unique. Like if it's too unique,
like if you've got a really exactly like a unique product, like the hands-free toothbrush that people might not know exists, then that's not necessarily good for Amazon. But on Shopify, it's like you can drive traffic. You can drive traffic of a certain audience towards your website. Yeah. And you can run, Instagram ads and videos and generate some type of viral content to get someone interested in wow, this hands-free toothbrush.
100%.
But on the other hand, if something is generic, like just a plain old toothbrush,
Yep.
And selling it on your Shopify site, it's like you have to drive all the people, all the ads to it, to a generic product. Whereas if you're on Amazon, you just get the people that are already searching for toothbrushes.
You're a hunt. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And the thing is one thing we found, interestingly enough, to add to that, is we find that even the most interesting products, what happens is they end up in a very competitive space. I'll give you an example. There was a company that I found. We didn't end up working with them, but they had a spice grinder, and it was a very innovative spice grinder. It was super cool. The guy had like 30 something patents on it. It was insane. And it had these individual pods, and it was a super unique product. And ironically, the guy, he wasn't making as much money as he should have on, hello, my dog in the background. He wasn't making as much money as he should have on Amazon, but I'll tell you why he wasn't. He had a really unique product, but he was in a field of spice grinders and all these things that was very saturated by the big names, the KitchenAids, the Kraft, whatever those companies are, the ones that are really, really big, that are doing billions. They're in distribution in major retail stores. You would see his ads and you would see his product, and it would probably be 10 seconds worth of scrolling before you would even see his product, because that space was so dominated from major brand players. If you're in a toothbrush space, right, think about all the major brands you're competing with in the toothbrush space, right, in the toothpaste space, in the dental space in general. So we're finding that a lot of them, even though they have a very innovative product that people would probably like, even when people are searching for it, they can't compete with the big guys. They don't have that ability. Whereas with external media, when you're running traffic through Facebook or Instagram or where, YouTube, even though you're competing, your impressions you're getting eyes. And if you have really great direct response content, people are going to respond to that, because it's in their face. They can't miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, other than like picking the right product, where else would you start with, bringing someone along that journey from Amazon to Shopify?
Yeah. So the second thing I would probably start doing is you have to start building the right infrastructure. One of the things that a lot of people want to do, not just on Amazon, but even, people who want to sell stuff on Shopify, they typically want to send traffic to a page or to their business in general, right? And the page or business is not equipped to handle that traffic, right? It doesn't have the ability to capture data, emails, phone numbers, all that good stuff. Doesn't have the proper, the proper offer, use acquisition pages versus like a website, right? A website, a lot of people will send people directly to a website. We build pages that are kind of like direct response pages, kind of like, think of, direct mailers, but now it's just more modern day. You're talking an individual landing page that its only purpose is to bring people into the business. So you want to have that kind of infrastructure built. So when people come, they want to buy your product. And when they do buy your product, you're capturing their data, and you can leverage that data to turn that person into a recurring customer, turn a one-time customer into a customer for life.
Right. And so then there's also like email campaigns and things like that to be built. Like with Amazon, you don't have access to your customer data. So now Shopify, you do. Now you can start running it like you would run a lot of other internet-based businesses, where you can, you develop a customer list, you cultivate the customer list, you could retarget people. Yep. There's all kinds of things that you could do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that infrastructure is critical, because if you don't do it, you're just, I call it an in and out problem. You have traffic that comes in and then it goes out, and then you never see it again. And I know firsthand what that does to a business, because it happened to me.
Yeah, you're leaving money on the table for one. Yep. And even beyond the sales side of things is like the customer service side of it, and support, maintaining customer relations. And it's kind of like all the stuff that Amazon spent billions of dollars on creating, which kind of, like as an FBA seller, you're providing products to them, you're doing things to generate sales, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that they do that now as a Shopify seller, you need to do also. You have to duplicate some of some of that infrastructure.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is you get to, you have the opportunity to, whenever we get customer service stuff, just personally, like with my own brand, I really leverage that opportunity to have conversations with my customer, because you get a lot of information besides just like returns. And, people tend to think like, even just from a customer service standpoint, right? I like having that control because I use it not only for feedback, but I use it for an opportunity to actually build a long-term relationship with the customer. Returns, I found it's really funny. I know a lot of people think that when a product is getting returned, they think, oh, the product is being returned. This person probably doesn't want to buy from my company again. And it's just not true. That just means they don't want to buy that product. But if you make the return process simple, if you say, hey, would you be interested in possibly trying this product? We'll ship it out to you free of charge. Try this, let us know. I've retained so many customers literally by having our customer service team just sending people a different variation of the product, or even an entirely new product, even if the cost differential is a little bit above or below. Because at the end of the day, sending out that product does not cost to me as much as losing a customer. And when you make the process easy, when you really care about what their emotions are in the customer service process, like, hey, we're not robots. We have personality behind our customer service. That really builds a long-term customer. I mean, that is the kind of customer that says, hey, listen, I didn't like that product, but this company made it so easy for me to return it and try something else that I'd be willing to try something else if they sell me on email 3-4 months down the line. We see it. It's definitely not like hireable. It happens all the time.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I think it's a really cool niche to be in, to help people with that journey. Amazon to Shopify. People want to learn more about you, get in touch with you. How do they go about doing so?
Sure. Yeah, they can visit obviously our website is Brainpower, www.brainpower.agency. You can also contact me via email. My email is Caulen, spelled Caulen @brainpower.agency. And you can also look me up on LinkedIn. If you look me up on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure I'm the only Caulen spelled Caulen. So I'm always available there as well.
Absolutely. Well, you are my only Caulen friend spelled Caulen.
You will probably be able to say that for the rest of your life.
Right. So Caulen, I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Rich. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.